Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. And today, we're going to talk about the wardroom call buttons. This is a pretty obscure and in-the-weeds thing, which I know you guys are all surprised after watching this channel that we'd do something like that. Yeah, at least it's not another pedantic video on chairs, right? Or light bulbs. So, the officers of the ship have a lot of responsibilities. And so they've got enlisted sailors who serve as their stewards, who take care of a lot of their needs, like cleaning their cabins and bringing their food out to them. And so that is saving them time and worry. They don't have to think about those mundane, everyday tasks, so they can focus more on leading the ship's crew and doing the high-level tactical and strategic missions of the ship. So, the wardroom call button is one surviving example of that relationship between officers and stewards. The only other example I can think of off the top of my head is the bullseyes for many of the officers' compartments as who is in charge of this space, and it'll be like S2 division or something like that, the stewards division. So they're the ones who are in charge of cleaning it, not the officers who are there. So here is the archaeology that shows us this call system. Notice you've got power coming up to this junction box, and it comes to an outlet built into the table. But then notice there's another wire that comes out. Come around to the other side of the table with me. I just realized I'm still wearing my gloves. We were filming an episode on the ship Silver earlier. This is not something that's so delicate it has to be handled in gloves. So, if you look under the table here, you'll see that there's a cleat that this is wrapped around. And so, this door buzzer thing on a piece of teak is our current example of a wardroom call button. This is not the original example. We have the wiring in place, but the original call buttons themselves are missing. And so some of our volunteers mocked up one for this table right here. We don't have them on all of the ship's tables. Each table would have had their own, and I'm not sure if these were removed at some point during the ship's career. It would have been an original World War II feature. So by the 80s, it might not have been as common, or it might have been they're building a new ship and they come over and they strip parts off and they're like, oh, that's cool, let's take that. So it would have been some sort of corded button that each table would have had. And you notice that our tables are these long things, but they have multiple, these big bases in them. There are leaves that are removed to turn these into smaller tables, and that's usually how the space would have been arranged, a series of much smaller tables. And we keep it with these big tables for today's events. But so each of these bases, realistically, has a junction box, has an outlet, and should have a call button attached to it, so that each table can call independently when they need something. So now we're in the officers' pantry, where the stewards would have been doing whatever other work they had, and here's the original call box. You can see on its listed table 3, table 4, stateroom, guest cabin, executive officer's cabin, wardroom lounge. All of these different spaces are on here in this spring-loaded plate. So when you push the button, one, that plate will flip open so that you can see which one is calling you, so the steward on duty knows where to go. And two, on top of this, behind the air vent, is a little bell. And the bell will ring to give you an audio cue. So if I'm over here frying something on the stovetop, who needs something? So you've got systems like these in a couple of places around the ship, such as the wardroom. The executive officer, in addition to having a button that calls to here, has another one like this outside of his door. So he would have likely had an orderly assigned to him, much like the captain. And the captain has a couple of places around his cabin, and those buttons are still intact. So let's go up there and look at that. Here's the call button for outside the captain's cabin. And notice this one's even got the lever on it for when one's down, when you're going to answer it, you can clear that so that it goes back into the up position for the next time he pushes the button. And here you can see the bell much better. So what do we have here? stateroom and desk. I can't really read these other ones. It's too scratched up. But let's see where the buttons actually are. So one of the locations is in the captain's stateroom here, right at the head of the bed. The captain's in bed and he decides he wants a grilled cheese sandwich. He's got two call buttons, one to his pantry and one to his orderly. The orderly would be the one outside the door where that box just was. And so this implies that there's also one of these call boxes in the pantry. The orderly would usually be a Marine. The pantry person would usually be a steward. So is it a security thing or a like food or housekeeping sort of thing? It's got another one next to the door. And yeah, this is definitely part of the World War II system. Look at that, Bakelite tags, the old armored battle wire. So much bigger buttons. If he's walking around the space, he can just jam that on the way through. So here under the table, we've got a wire that comes out of the junction box that goes down to the outlet, just like we saw in the wardroom. We've got another wire that comes over to the side, and there's a little socket thing, which implies that you could have plugged in another call button, like one of those movable kinds on a cord. But that has a wire coming out of it as well. So in addition to being an outlet, it's also being used as a junction box. And that wire is permanently attached to the table. And it comes all the way over here. And there is a button attached to the underside of the table right here, which it's two buttons. So probably, again, pantry and orderly. So if you're like me and you ponder these things at night, which end of the table did the captain sit on? The aft end or the forward end? He sat right here. This was the head of the table. Yeah, so we know that these existed in the wardroom, in the executive officer's cabin, and the captain's cabin. There may have been a similar system in the other officers' staterooms, but I haven't looked for evidence of it. Many of those staterooms are used for other things. I don't go in there frequently. There was almost certainly a system like this in the old admiral's cabin that got completely gutted when that space was changed out. And interestingly, when they install the new admiral's cabin, they do not install a system like this. Instead, they have a series of phones around the admiral's spaces and where all of his orderlies are. So rather than just push a button that hits an old archaic call box thing, he would actually pick up the phone, dial whichever extension, and the extensions on the ship tend to be 4 digits long, starting with the number 7, and then tell them exactly what he wants rather than summoning them to him and then telling them what to go and get. So again, that may demonstrate that by the 1980s, this whole concept from World War II has gone out of style, which is why it's not reinstalled. Or it might just be that that was too complex and this was a relatively simplistic conversion to make the Admiral's stateroom. We've managed to answer some of our questions and unveiled some more mysteries to look up in the future. What do you think? Do you keep a dinner bell on your table at home? Let us know in the comment section down below. We don't keep a dinner bell on the table on the ship because as she's pitching and rolling, it'll roll right off. Or ring when it's not supposed to, which is probably why they switched to the call button system. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourselves. We really appreciate your support. There's a link in the description below if you'd like to continue donating to support the museum and our channel. Thanks for watching.